Welcome to peacepodcast.org. I'm Barbara Gonmuller, and I say you are in for the most amazing, healing, transformational way of looking at you, looking at the past generations of who you became and why you're here and how you can heal if you need it. And if you don't need it, why not learn how to heal and help others? This is Barbara Gonmuller, podcast number 135. And peace is possible because we have these podcasts for peace, happiness, and healthy living. Today, we're going to focus on healthy living, having that time to say to myself, where am I? Who am I? And what can I do to bring our world into peace? Welcome today, Estera Borcsa.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here with you, Barbara. This is exciting for me.
Well, your mission in life is exciting for you, but listen to this. Her mission in life is to break generational curses of trauma, transform lives, families, communities, and governments. Is that possible?
I think so. I'd like to believe it.
Well, I believe it too. She has devoted her career and research to understanding human development and how people heal from trauma. Her youngest client was 3 years old and her oldest 89. And she is currently the Deputy Vice President of the Neuroscience Program in Newport Beach. She was born in Romania, which just blew me away because I think I shared before that I'm Hungarian. And my grandfather immigrated here when he was 17. And at that time, it was called Hungary, and then it was called Romania, then it was called Hungary. But it was a definite communist area. And when they said war was going to break out, he said, no way, I don't believe in war, and he left. So anyway, she was born in Romania, a beautiful country, wailing from the negative impact by the communists and the communist leaders. She witnessed disparity to a monumental level and saw individuals, families, and communities broken by systematic trauma, coupled with poverty, discrimination, and abuse. But that didn't discourage her. She earned her doctoral degree and dissertation focused on global diplomacy. She developed a diplomacy training program called Peace Unleashed, based in neuroscience for the United Nations member states to help diplomats overcome barriers to achieving the sustainable development goals. You know, just listening to her background makes me want to ask her a question. Can you tell us, how does trauma really affect the brain on a neurological level? And what long-term impacts can it have on the individual's mental and physical health?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Barbara. So, my working definition of trauma is that it is an event that happened in the past that left a wound in the present. And I always say, what happens to us in childhood is not our fault. But what we do with it as adults is our responsibility, because we deserve a good life. And the reason I'm so devoted in my career in helping people heal, because I've seen some amazing people who had horrible things happen to them in many traumatic instances, and it impacted their entire lives. It impacted the way they function in relationships. It impacted how they feel about themselves. And so the root of trauma has two impacts. It impacts how we feel about ourselves, and it leaves some emotional wounds in the present, which are related to how we feel about ourselves, like our negative core beliefs, like I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I can't do anything right. All of those negative core beliefs are, how it's rooted in our identity. So trauma impacts our identity, and it also impacts how we view the world. So that's the second way trauma impacts us. It impacts our ability to visualize good things for ourselves. And when we stop visualizing good things for ourselves, we stop living. We're controlled by our fear. We're controlled by the anxieties and worries of life. And so my whole goal and mission, like you were saying in my intro, is to teach people that our brain is adaptive. Our brain is an amazing organism, and it's a supercomputer. It's adaptive, it's healing, it's always trying to move to adaptivity and healing. We just have to get out of the way and put in the focus and attention to healing ourselves, and looking at how trauma impacted us, and clearing our past so we can be more focused on the present and plan our future.
Oh my, those words are so healing just to hear you say them. And when I took your course on a Saturday morning, I said to myself, this is the magic we've been waiting for. Now, it takes work. And you said something that just blew me away. You said how we respect the brain and how the brain helps us heal, move, and change, and we can modify past experiences. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, absolutely. So one of the most fundamental things about the brain is that as children, as our brain is still growing, so the part of the brain that focuses on memory is called the hippocampus. And the hippocampus, as we're still growing as children, especially in the first 10 years of life, is when we really develop our emotional regulation. It's when our brain is still growing. And so therefore, we remember things distorted. And so as children, when something horrific happens to us, like abuse, like different traumatic instances, like conflict in our homes and otherwise, what happens is that our brain remembers that in a distorted way, and we make it mean something about us. When someone hurt me or abused me, I said I wasn't good enough. It must mean that I am nothing, that I was nothing. And so that's the memory we need to modify, because the truth is that you are a poor, helpless kid trying to survive, and it is not your fault that you were abused. It is not your fault that you were physically abused in that time. And so modifying that memory with the truth is a neuroscience tool. So I developed this technique called, this exercise really called Skeletons in the Closet. And it's about breaking other people's brokenness from us. It's about modifying those memories and allowing the brain to heal it by telling the truth. And I always say this term called this phrase, that healing happens at the intersection of truth and insight. If you want to heal from anything in your life, you have to start with the truth. And you have to be able to modify those things in our life, those distorted thoughts, those negative things we say about ourselves, the narratives that we tell ourselves, being able to modify them with the truth is really the brain's way of healing itself and moving towards adaptation. And so we have to give ourselves to do that.
How do you get to truth?
I think that's the hard part, Barbara, because it really requires work, right? I wish I would have found an easier way. In all my years of research, I think you said in my introduction, my youngest client was 3, the oldest was 89, and trauma always impacts people the same way. In order to get to the truth, we kind of have to go through the fire. We have to really, our brain is like a supercomputer, and what happens is that it's an alarm clock. When we get triggers or the alarm goes off, when it sent us a virus, right? The virus are the distorted things that happen to us in childhood, sometimes even adulthood. We have to be able to get to the truth of those things by uncovering them. We have to be able to identify our resentments, our bitterness, unforgiveness in our heart, unforgiveness for ourselves, understanding how to heal our inner child, being able to understand by doing a simple trauma timeline, looking at all of the things in our past that are distorted and being able to uncover the truth. And so it's basically finding the truth is going on a journey of self-exploration to identify, why is this a trigger for me? Why is this distorted? Why do I feel this way about myself? What are my emotional wounds that trauma left behind? And am I willing to find out what the truth is behind them so that I can heal? And so you've discovered the truth through putting in the work, and you have to develop insight into that situation, right? You have to identify, here's what the emotional wound is, and here's why. Identifying, getting insight into that situation. And then magically, when we put in the work, healing happens.
Now we're going to go into the present. How do we handle stress today? Because you said in the workshop, the way you handle stress creates your identity. So we're going to have wars on the TV. We're going to have people who are emotionally distraught come to us for help. So how do we respond to stress in a way that allows us to be healed?
Yeah. So, the part of our brain that deals with stress, it's called the amygdala, right? So the amygdala, people know about the amygdala, that it's a stress response of our brain, and they know it as the flight, flight, freeze response in our brain. When something traumatic happens, or we get in a crisis state of our mind, and we fight, flight, or freeze. But going deeper into the neural circuits of the amygdala, there's 2 of them that are important: the thalamo-amygdala pathway and then the cortical amygdala pathway. So the thalamo-amygdala pathway is a pathway in our immediate response to a threatening stimuli. So basically it's immediate. So that's what our brain wants to do, is it wants to deal with stress right away. So it activates that neural circuit. But the one that is more effective is the cortical amygdala pathway, and that is a more accurate, slower pathway that involves critical thinking, and it activates the critical thinking part of our brain, which is our prefrontal cortex, so that it can adjust the response accordingly. And so the way that we manage stress is the most important part of life. I always say that the key to life is learning how we manage stress. We have to know ourselves so well that we know how we're going to respond to the next crisis in our life before it happens. And in order to do that, we have to be able to learn how to mature mentally, right? So I'm writing this article right now on mental health maturity. And one of the first steps to mental health maturity and learning how to manage stress is just to pause and reflect, learning how to sit with ourselves, learning how to sit with difficult information, learning how to deal with tolerating distress. Learning, the second step is learning how to talk ourselves through it, how to talk ourselves through a difficult time. And so being able to manage those things and how to manage stress and develop good tools, learning to yourself, I feel sad right now. I feel stressed. I feel angry. And right now I'm about a 7. The first 3 steps I'll give you guys a little tool right now. The first 3 steps to emotional regulation. The first step is identifying your feeling, just saying, right now I feel crummy. I have the icks. I feel sad. And I feel it. The second step is identifying a number 1 through 10. On a scale of 1 through 10, I'm about a 7 right now. I feel it really bad. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to do anything today at all. And so I need to get to below a 5. I need to get to a 4. So you have to ask yourself, the third step is asking yourself, what do I need to do to get from a 7 on the sad scale to a 4? And ask yourself that question. And maybe you need to go for a walk. Maybe you need to journal. Maybe you need to talk to a friend. Whatever your reflective practices are and how you manage distress is important, because healing is really a self-exploration journey. It's learning yourself well. It's learning, when I'm upset, how do I calm myself down? How do I de-escalate myself? How do I talk myself through it? And you'll realize how effective your brain is in kicking in, because it's a supercomputer and it's trying to move to adaptivity and healing. It'll remind you about all the positive things in your life. Just a simple exercise of allowing gratefulness in when you're in that place of sadness, on how to walk yourself through it. And so I've developed tons of those tools for myself. Like when I'm feeling and distressed, or I really need time to be able to process things, I go for a little drive. That's really important for me. Being able to talk through it, being able to do a mind decluttering technique, a technique that I teach a lot in my courses and my work is doing, being able to just declutter our mind, changing the controllables, accepting the things that we can't control, talking ourselves through it, right? All of these ways are ways that we can be good stewards of our mental health and to decrease the stress response in our brain, our amygdala.
Wow. It's all about being mindful, isn't it? Present and real. It's real. I'm real. If I'm going to have stress, that's going to happen. And to be really present for that and to say, this is where I am, acknowledge it, and this is what I'm going to do about it. Both of us are a member of the Rotary E-Club of World Peace. And Rotary has over 35,000 clubs, and a lot of them, are in war zones and they're experiencing stress. What can we do to help organizations on a global level and to show them that trauma recovery in communities can be possible, even if there's a disaster? And that's really important, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I really have this, in all of my work, I'm really clinical and all of the individual work with clients, with communities. But I really have a global focus, and I care about healing communities and healing countries and really helping in these war zones, because there's so many parts of the world that are suffering. And so I'm also part of the E-Club for World Peace, and we love the work that we do with Rotary. And the important aspect I think we need to tell people, all the Rotary clubs, especially in conflict zones, is that we have to be an example of healing. And as we heal ourselves, we also heal our communities and allow more time and space for these type of conversations to happen, creating dialogues where we talk about healing, where we talk about the difficult things that happen, really taking a trauma-informed approach, talking about all of these aspects with our, within our own teams, to making sure that we are handling them correctly, and also being able to train the community members on all these aspects of healing and neuroscience work, and teaching people how to be good stewards of their mental health, how to manage these difficult things, because it also helps in advocacy and diplomacy And that's part of the, my dissertation work is on diplomacy, because I want to teach diplomats and these high level political advocates on how to really heal communities. If we really care about the SDGs and the world goals, how do we talk about collective trauma when a community is all experiencing the same trauma and they're dealing with very, very difficult situations where they lost family members and there's high conflict and war? Like, how do we identify how to heal communities, right? How to really work through those things?
I think you're onto something. The world is crying out for peace, according to RI International President Gordon McAnally, who's on a peace podcast. And he said that trauma is healed by finding people, like-minded people that support you. And it allows you to have conversations, and it allows you to see you're not alone on these global goals that we've talked about. And so the community around you is important. Trauma is for real. It's not going to go away, but it's how we handle it, right? And yep. As you have gone through your PhD at Southern California, USC, you probably heard some samples of people who lived through trauma only to become so passionate about what they believe in that now they're teaching how others can do this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you brought up a really good point, that healing happens in communities and that we need the social supports. One of the most important aspects of healing is vulnerability, identifying that we need help, that we're willing to work on ourselves, acknowledging that that's the first step. And the other side of the coin for vulnerability is humility. It's not only saying I need help, but I need others. Mm-hmm. And we learn to do that, and we learn how to be a comfort to ourselves and other people, then it creates this facet of healing. Mm-hmm. We create space for it. We talk about it. We acknowledge it. We come from a place of humility and say, I share a lot of self-disclosure in my own work and therapy and healing communities. And even in teaching, you probably saw in the workshop, I share a lot about my own journey, because it's important for us to acknowledge we're all healing from something. We're all on the same journey. We're all part of the one human race who's healing from something. And the more that we provide that support to one another, the better off we are. Because even through COVID, we realized that, mental health increased like 500%. We had the most psychotic breaks ever in history. And the reason that is because of the isolation. It's because we need other people to heal, because the sense of community is very important.
Boy, I'm looking at the word heal, and I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking healing actually takes place with the E, with energy, looking at ourselves through love, and the A, what could the A be? HEAL. Attention.
Attention.
Yeah. Healing, energy, attention, and love.
I love that.
I love it too. And
we just created an acronym.
Healing is energy, attention, and love. And I know it's about love. I cannot tell you how many books I have read in my career of getting my master's degree and working on with education. And it all boils down to loving ourselves, knowing that we're as perfect as we can be given the circumstances. But it's time for us to heal. I mean, I'll share a little personal story. When I was born, my mother was this gorgeous woman who worked at Macy's and all that. And I was born with all this hair. And she said to the nurse, I think this is the wrong baby. It can't be my baby. And so think about that. And so the nurse said, no, that's your baby. And so 20 years later, I said to myself, I better heal myself. So what I did was I said, okay, I'm going to rebirth me. Oh, what a beautiful baby you are. I'm so glad you were born. So I did a kind of a mimicking of my mother. And my mother always apologized. And she said, I'm so glad you were born. And, she knew that saying those words at that time kind of started a trauma, could have. But anyway, we heal, don't we?
We do. And that's an important aspect that you bring up, because even there is one of my favorite trauma people, trauma teachers. He's actually a medical doctor, Dr. Gabor Mate. He talks a lot. He was a Holocaust survivor, and he's actually Hungarian too. And he talks about trauma, and he talks about how when he was 1 month old, or a few months old, his mom gave him to a complete stranger because she was afraid she was going to be taken into concentration camps, and she wanted to save him. And so she gave him to a stranger for a month. And he talks about how he doesn't remember that, but that sense of abandonment was ingrained in his being. And that as children, even now, the idea of like, there's research that shows that attachment is very important to a caregiver, and that those first like 70 to 80% of mental health disorders are related to attachment. And so how we attach to our main caregivers and that first stage of life is a very important part of healing, and being able to overcome traumatic things happening in our life, and how we function within our lives, and even the fears that we have. And so, and our ability to trust ourselves and to trust the world is related to attachment. And so I think you bring up a good point about being able to go and invest those things and really look at sense of attachment and how we attach to caregivers, and just our trauma timeline of how we've come to be, because that really speaks about our identity and how we feel about ourselves.
This is so important. I almost want to have you create a primer for people to self-heal, because as we said, it's healing, energy, attention, and love. And healing transforms us. It does, doesn't it? And this is just conversation one. I could talk to you for 2 hours, especially after I took the workshop, and how to be healthy. We have to take care of ourselves. So I'm sure people are going to want to go to your website. So would you help us with the website?
Yes. So you can find me at esteraborcsa.com, which is EsteraBorcsa.com, esteraborcsa.com. And you can find all of my socials there, ways to get in contact. Please reach out. I created an organization called Teach, Train, Transform, which is really about teaching people about mental health maturity. It's about teaching them how to be good stewards of their mental health. My goal is to break the psychology system, because I feel it's so broken, and it's really rooted in the medical model, and it's about helping people that are sick. But I want to teach people about neuroscience and about how to heal themselves, and about neuroscience and our brain and how dynamic it is, through teaching them how to teach them how to, we teach and train them how to transform their lives. And so that's what Triple T is about: teach, train, transform. And I'm excited to do more work. I have a course coming out, an article, a children's book. So there's a lot of good stuff happening. Please go look at esteraborcsa.com and fill out the bottom with your contact info so you can get our newsletter, upcoming courses and workshops, and all that good stuff.
We store our emotions. And until we look at that storage, we will not be able to heal, as she said so well. And Dr. Estera Borcsa said, the truth and insight, from that we shall heal. And it starts with love. And there's just so much. That's why I say go to her website. Even knee pain can be looked at as the effect that I don't want to move forward because I haven't taken care of something. There's so many things, such a such a complex body that we have. There's no simple solutions. And so I think what we're doing today is giving you a teaser that this is something that we need to do for our planet, for ourselves, for our community, and for our family. And all I can do is say thank you. Thank you for the research that you've given us. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your website. I so look forward to the next episode to hear what you have come up with next, because you are one of the people I look forward to hearing again and again, because it all starts with me. And after the course, I began breaking down the causes of intergenerational neuro body balance, intergenerational trauma. And I said, how can we help Rotary change their minds about peace? And all of these things that are rooted in trauma don't help us get to peace. But if we take a look, we might be able to heal. Am I correct?
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Time will do what time does best, which is pass by. But we have to be intentional about healing and give attention and focus to the parts of ourselves that need healing, and to find good balance. And the goal should be peace of mind. How do I increase my internal locus of control and this inner strength so that I have peace of mind, so that I have good balance in my life? And so when we do that and ask those important questions, that's how we heal.
And with that, I say heal, pray, love, pay attention, and know that peace is possible. And it begins with all of us. You just never know when somebody's going to say to you, I'm not feeling so good today. This is your time for a conversation. Thank you, Dr. Bhaskara. Thank you so much. As she said, you can go to her website and sign up for her newsletter. And I'm going to do that right after our podcast. Thank you for joining us today. Why don't you watch this podcast with a friend and have a conversation? Maybe share some of those things that you haven't shared with others. And remember, you are loved. Thank you again for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Barbara. That was very great. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. And with that, I say, peace be with you, and peace is possible. And I'm Barbara Gahn-Mueller. Tune in to Peace Podcast. You have 135 choices now. Bye for now.